From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in a Las Vegas hotel casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Very excited to be here in downtown Las Vegas on the corner of Main Street. Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Amazing. I want to go straight to our guest because he's here with us, and we're very honored and excited to have this gentleman with us. It's a big day for us, so please introduce him, Gary.
Sure, yeah. Today we're going to be speaking with Sports Betting Hall of Famer, now a New York Times bestseller, the Michael Jordan of sports betting, entrepreneur, philanthropist, the husband of Lady Luck. Welcome, Billy Walters, on the corner of Main Street. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure being here at the Union Plaza.
We got Wild Bill from Louisville. That's Wild Bill from Louisville. That's what I picked up from the book, Billy. And thank you for being here, and thank you for referring to it as Union Plaza. That's how we know you're a real Vegas guy, because most people come here and say they're at the Plaza or downtown. But if you're saying Union Plaza, you know your Vegas history, and we're obviously here a long time ago.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, having read your book, and it's incredible, and frankly should be a movie one day as well. I'm sure you're already thinking about that. But why do the book? What made you want to do the book and share some of your secrets, I guess? Well,
there were a number of reasons that I did the book. I finally decided, I thought about it in like 2003-04. I started doing the book with a friend in Las Vegas, Jack Sheehan, and could never really get the book kind of the way that I was comfortable with, and then I kind of changed my mind. I said, I'm not going to do a book. And then things took place in my life. I got indicted in the Southern District in New York, and I went to court there, and that process that I'd gone through, although I thought I understood the legal process, I'd been indicted 5 times before, and I'd been through, different court venues in Nevada and California and Kentucky. The experience that I had in New York was so reprehensible and unbelievable to me that I ended up getting convicted of a crime and sent to prison for something that I definitely didn't do. And because of the way that it took place, it kind of rekindled my interest in doing a book. But I still hadn't totally decided to do it. But while I was in prison, my daughter committed suicide from opioids, and that confirmed, that was a confirmation that I had to do this book. So my motivation in doing the book is I wanted to help a lot of people. My early childhood, my young adulthood, I made a lot of mistakes. I had issues with alcohol. I had issues with addictions. And through a number of things, I was able to overcome those things and get my life turned around and get it in a positive direction. Number one was I married the most incredible lady in the world I've been married to for 47 years, and that was the beginning of it. And then, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have sold the information that I put in the book in regards to sports handicapping or betting. I wouldn't have sold it for many millions of dollars. But I'm 77 years old, and you've got gambling that's legal in the majority of the states in the United States now, and I see so many people that are betting sports for the first time. And, I think of myself when I was betting sports, and I really didn't know what I was doing and where I was at in betting sports. So I decided to put everything that I knew in the book in regards to sports handicapping and sports betting. That's my legacy. I'm 77 years old. No one lives forever.
Right.
And then I had to explain in detail the process that took place in the Southern District of New York and how I got sent to prison, because the public perception of what took place and the reality of what took place were completely absolutely opposite of what really happened. And the people involved in that, I couldn't believe some of the people that were actually involved in it. But that portion is not a he said, she said portion. It's 100% fact-based upon court transcripts, emails that the government turned over. So there's no question about what I put in the book is accurate or not. As a matter of fact, further confirmation of it, there's not one thing that I put in the book in regards to that prosecution or conviction that no one has come out and denied any of it.
Right.
So that's but then I had to share the experience of being in prison itself. I had hired people out of prison before. I'd visited friends in prison, and I thought I understood prison until I went to prison. Mm-hmm. And then I really realized what freedom really means. Yep. But the only positive thing that came out of prison is I mentored approximately 24 men. And that really opened my eyes, because I found out that 60% of people in prison never get a visit.
I read that in the book about the gentleman whose daughter you had come visit.
Yeah, they never get a visit. And then these men, the closer they would get to the door of being released, I would spend more time with them. And my time I spent with them was generally all one-on-one. And we're talking about men that have been in prison, some of them 20, 25 years, and physically just, intimidating men. But they would break down and weep uncontrollably the closer they got to the door, because not a one of them wanted to go back to prison. But every one of them was convinced they were going to go back to prison because they had no way to earn a living. The only thing they had learned in prison was how to be a better prisoner, mm-hmm. or how to be a better criminal. They didn't learn anything at all about, a lot of them didn't even know how to use a cell phone. I mean, a lot of them have been in there so long, cell phones weren't even available.
Wow.
So I knew when I got out of prison, I had to try to do something to make a change. And so that's the reason I wrote the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to one second, Gary. I'm sorry to hear about your daughter. That's horrible, and I do think that you go about setting the record straight. If Oscar was here joining us, he'd go nuts about crooked FBI, and some of the things that happened to you are pretty insane. To hear those stories and how this came to be. So again, I'm sorry to hear about that. Thank you for setting the record straight. I did take something from the book that's very valuable to me on a lighter note. I grew up playing snooker in England, and was a decent player. You obviously were a very good pool player. I don't think they have snooker here in England. In the US, but you say in the book that the reason you were good at golf was because you would imagine yourself putting with like a snooker cue, a pool cue, and it never dawned on me that, but I'm known as 3-putt Johnny for a reason. And now, the last time I played golf, I started thinking of it as a pool stick, and I'm much better. So thank you. That was my best takeaway. Although all the important things you did talk about, that was very helpful to me.
Good.
So
and for our listeners, just so they're aware, the book is called Gambler: Secrets of a Life at Risk. If you're listening to this podcast, especially the people that listen, this is a must-read for anybody who has been to Las Vegas or is interested in the casino business in any way, or just hustling, entrepreneurship. I mean, it covers really a wide range of different topics. So.
Weren't you going to call the book Chicken or Feathers?
That was one of the names that we had considered, and when we were done with it, chicken or feathers, that kind of describes a gambler's life. One day is chicken, the next day is feathers, and but we decided to go with the name that we came up with. We actually named a chapter in the book "Chicken or Feathers."
Yeah.
But back to, and you haven't asked me this question, but I came to Las Vegas and a long time ago in 1982, and when I came here, I was broke. I was $200,000 in debt and broke. So whatever financial success I've had, it's been a large part because of Las Vegas itself. The second best thing I ever did in my life was to move to Las Vegas.
The first?
The first was marry my wife, Susan.
Okay.
47 years. Yeah. Moving to a town that, was controlled by the gaming industry, and where back in those days, if you were even a sports bettor, you were looked at, in other parts of the country like you were, a retrograde or a criminal or something. Right. By ignorant people, they just didn't know better. And but when I moved here, you're surrounded by people, that like yourself. You know, they're in different forms of the gaming business, and you're not judged unfairly. And as far as opportunity is concerned, then and still today, Las Vegas has never been a real cliquish town that people, you know, when you move here, you have as much opportunity as people who've been here for many, many years. And so Las Vegas has been great to me and my family.
So that was our segue, but thank you for bringing it up. Why did you move to Las Vegas in the 70s? Is it 60s or 70s you moved here?
It was in 82 when I moved here. The first time I visited here was in 1968.
Okay.
And ironically, on that visit, I met Kirk Vickery and I met Benny Binion on the first time I came to Las Vegas. But I moved here in 1982. I'd been in the automobile business in Kentucky for 16 years, and as I tell the story in the book, that it was my young adulthood. I had a lot of issues with. I was actually addicted to gambling. I had alcohol issues, and I basically wasn't doing a very good job of controlling things that weren't good for me. I made a lot of money. I just didn't accumulate any money. But something happened in my life that no one should ever be exposed to. My son was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, and anyway, long story short, I lost my business. I lost everything I had, and ended up getting a divorce and got remarried. So, but anyway, throughout the 16 years I was in the automobile business, all that money I lost to bookmakers. You know, they came by every Monday to settle up. I decided I was going to become a bookmaker. I knew I was as smart as they were, and I would outwork most of them. So I became a bookmaker in Kentucky along with a handicapper. And I was actually booking and handicapping sports, and I got arrested in Kentucky for being a bookmaker, which I was guilty of. And so I had to make a decision: either stay in Kentucky, go back in the automobile business, quit gambling because I couldn't gamble there anymore, or go someplace where I could gamble, I would be accepted, and so we decided to move to Las Vegas. And so I moved here in 1982 and broke $200,000 in debt, and
wow.
My first partner was Doyle Brunson.
So you mentioned Kirk Corcoran and Benny Binion, by the way, which are the two other books that I always tell people to read. And Kirk's book is also called The Gambler. Yours is Gambler, his is The Gambler.
Yeah.
I always tell people to read that book, and then Benny Binion's Blood Aces, which I think is an amazing book as well. I always tell them. But give us an insight. What was Las Vegas like in the 80s? For people that weren't here, like myself. Give us an indication of what was the town like then.
Well, it was a much smaller town, you know, than it is today. Obviously, it was a much safer town. I can assure you that.
Wow.
And much safer town. You know, back in the real early '80s, the organized crime was still here. And but you know, unless you were sideways of organized crime, you didn't even really know they were here. But from a gambling standpoint, the gambling from a customer standpoint was much better back then than it is today. Sure. Benny Binion is an example. The Horseshoe, you could bet $25,000 a hand on single deck blackjack, and you could bet 7 spots.
Wow.
Yeah, the craps were no limit, and the odds were no limit for a while. You could bet a lot more money on sports then than you could today. There were probably 25 different hotels with 25 different independent owners. Today, you've got a monopoly in Las Vegas. Primarily, 6-7 places control the entire city.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the only people that monopolies are good for are the people who have them. They're certainly not good for customers. So, from a sports betting standpoint, a gambling standpoint, you know, the city's taken a huge step back from a customer standpoint. You know, they've changed the odds, and even though you couldn't win playing blackjack, guys that weren't counting, you know, they've changed the odds in blackjack. It's more in favor of the house now. They've changed the odds in sports betting. It's more in favor of the house now. You know, and back when I first came here, the town was, you know, the revenue predominantly came from gaming income. You know, room, food, and beverage was something that was there to entertain the guests with, and normally if you're a gambler, they gave it to you. The business model's completely changed today. You know, the majority of the revenue is non-gaming in Las Vegas. But as far as the gambling part of it is concerned with a customer, if you're a gambler, I don't think Las Vegas is nearly as good today as it was in the 80s. I don't think I don't think any part of it's as good. The limits, the games, the way they're structured, or anything else.
I hate to hear that because we weren't here in the 80s, but everyone you talk to that was here says exactly that. Better times, better gambling. And I did hear that you had the lease for the sports books at the MGM and the Mandalay Bay. You could have been in the sports on the other side of the business, right?
Yeah, prior to being indicted while I was here, I'd made a deal with Terry Lanny and Mike Ensign, and I was going to lease all the sports books at Mandalay Bay at the time, which was 5, and all the MGM Mirage sports books. And unfortunately, 2 weeks before we were going to sign the contract, I got indicted. And they had me tied up with that for over 6 years, although I was exonerated on every charge, every allegation. By the time I got finished with that, I said, to hell with this. I don't want to fool with this because, I was kind of, it was a bad experience what I'd gone through, and I didn't want to go through that again. I decided I'll just keep on betting. And at that time, I'd also expanded what I was doing into golf courses, automobile dealerships. I was heavily invested in the stock market, and so I was doing a lot of different things and doing okay financially. So I just decided to leave it alone.
I think the landscaping of sports betting would have been very different if you had been on the other side. That would have been fascinating to see how the world would have changed and sports betting would have changed. But when you were indicted, you used Oscar Goodman as your attorney. Is that correct? And I think what's interesting is we've had Oscar probably do 25 episodes with us, and he's always talking about his perspective. And unfortunately, none of his clients are either alive or around to disagree with what he said. But can you give us some insight on, one, how you met Oscar, and two, working with him and how that was?
Well, the first time I was indicted, when I came here in '82, I was part of what was known at the time as a computer group. And then in January of 1985, we were indicted, myself and, 14, 15 other people throughout the United States. And the authorities mistakenly thought we were a group of organized bookmakers that were affiliated with organized crime, which was untrue on both accounts. We were organized bettors.
Right.
And they had never seen organized bettors before, and because of the amount of money that we were winning, they just assumed that we must be organized bookmakers. And so when we got raided in January of 1985, was the day before the Super Bowl. I had to get an attorney. So I called my attorney in Kentucky. His name was Frank Haddad, and Frank was a great lawyer. I mean, he's legendary, and he was a former president of the American Trial Lawyers Association. I didn't know any lawyers in Las Vegas, and he recommended Oscar Goodman. So I went down, and he called Oscar. I went down and introduced myself. We met. We reached a business agreement, and Oscar became my attorney. And a couple weeks later, every time I pick up the paper, Oscar was in the paper, and he was representing some pretty high-profile people, and the majority of them were allegedly mob people. And I thought...
Thank you for saying allegedly. Otherwise he would have corrected you on that.
Yeah, well, whatever. But anyway, I thought, man, I've got myself a real high profile here because, I'm betting on sports, and although Oscar is a great guy, great lawyer, and we became great friends, I consider him a great friend today and a great lawyer. My profile had been elevated substantially. But anyway, over a period of time, I think the decision was made initially to toss this case. They realized that we weren't booking and that we were betting, and the case initially went away. And I'd already paid Oscar a nice retainer fee at the time, and so 4.5 years go by, actually longer than that, 4 years, 11 months goes by. And at the very end, before the statute of limitations runs out, they decide that they were going to indict us, and we got indicted. And we got charged with being part of a criminal conspiracy conspiring to bet. Now think about that for a second. conspiring to bet in Las Vegas. So, and there was something that happened in the meantime. There was an FBI agent who approached me, and he wanted to talk to me. And initially, I wouldn't talk to him, and it became, actually kind of aggravating. And I told Oscar about it. Oscar had called his superior and told him, don't let this guy come around anymore. And then all at once, there was a guy here who was an investigative reporter at the time. His name was Ned Day. And Ned and I were friends. And I used to go to boxing matches with Ned. And Ned liked to bet on sports too. And I'd give Ned a few games to bet on. And Ned was living with a gal that he was dating. And her roommate was the guy was the head of the strike force here at the time was a guy named Larry Levitt, who became a federal magistrate and may still be a federal magistrate. But anyway, Ned's girlfriend was living with, at that time, Larry Levitt's girlfriend. And Ned came back to me and he said, look, they're not going to indict anyone for this. They realize that you were doing nothing but betting now. You weren't booking. And if you'll talk to this FBI agent, he's only been on the force for a few months, and explained to him the difference between bookmaking and betting, this will go away. So I went down and I discussed it with Oscar, and Oscar thought it was the worst idea in the world. You can't talk to an FBI agent. And of course I was young, I was naive, and at the time, which I'm no longer naive, the advice he gave me was 100% correct. But anyway, I decided I was going to meet with a guy and I was going to educate him on the difference between bookmaking and betting, and I did. And the case went away, and I thought, well, I've been successful. Well, anyway, a number of things that came up with the judge that was currently on the case, and there were some things that took place that, and a motion was filed to recuse the judge. And then Oscar learned that I talked to this FBI agent, which he was infuriated that I didn't take his advice and I talked to an FBI agent. Although I didn't tell the FBI agent anything, I got nothing out of it. Yeah. I got zero out of it. I made it very clear when I talked to him, I wanted nothing out of it. I wanted nothing for myself or my family because I didn't want to viewed to be an informant. I was strictly there to educate you on the difference between bookmaking and betting. So, as you can see, eventually, I ended up being indicted along with my wife, so you can see what I got out of it. I got nothing out of it. But it didn't make any difference. Oscar was upset because I'd met with the FBI agent when he told me not to, and at the time, as you can imagine, Oscar had some real negative experiences with federal law enforcement. So the decision was made in the 11th hour to switch attorneys, and we all agreed to it, and I hired Rick Wright, who represented us in that trial, and we went to that trial. We were exonerated there also, and the truth came out in the trial, and it was actually, if it had been a fight, they would have stopped it. They put the FBI agent on the stand. There was all kinds of things that came out. Anyway, it was a comedy of errors on their part.
You're right.
And before the trial, they had offered you a plea deal to get your wife out of any of the charges at the time, and then she stood by your side saying, we need to fight this.
I was charged with 121 counts, and my wife, what had happened, it's kind of hard to believe today because you got legalized sports betting in the majority of the United States. I lived in Rancho Bel Air. And early one morning, I've been playing poker that night. Early one morning, the FBI came to our house and arrested my wife and myself. They handcuffed us and put leg irons on us, and they took us out in front of our neighbors. And I looked and saw my wife Susan, and with the handcuffs and the leg irons. And then so we go down, and then they're going to indict her and myself, and we were given an ultimatum. I could plead guilty to those charges, and they would drop my wife out of the indictment. And we had that conversation at Oscar's office with Oscar and with Rick Wright. And I was ready to do anything to get my wife out of this because, I think most men would do whatever they had to do to protect their wives, although I hadn't done anything wrong. And my wife herself, she said, let's go talk about this. So we went and we sat down and we had a discussion. She said, look, we haven't done anything wrong, and if they're going to put somebody in jail for betting on ball games, she said, I just don't believe it. So we went back and we refused their deal, and sure enough, I got indicted along with my wife. She sat in federal court with me every day through that trial, and the investigation began in late '84. They raided us in '85. We got indicted in 1990. The statute of limitations was almost completely out, and we didn't go to court till 1992. So, so from 1984, the end of '84, until 2016, I had some type of either indictment or legal proceeding with someone. Yeah.
I mean, you're just reading your book and your stories from growing up in Louisville to dealing with the law here. I don't want to say you're a tough guy, but you've clearly been through a lot and withstood it all. But reading the book, it sounds like there was, and we try to talk about the characters of Old Vegas here a little bit. It sounds like there was one guy that was even scary to you, and that was Spilotro.
Yeah.
Couldn't you have called Oscar and told him to leave you alone? Didn't work like that?
No,
I think the first time we met was in Oscar's office.
that's correct.
Right.
Yeah, and when I first came here, like I said, organized crime was in town, and if you were a poker player, you were a gambler, you were whatever, you were a potential target for those guys, and if they approached you, you had a couple of choices. Either going to pay them tribute, part of what, you're going to give them a percentage of what you won, or you were going to have a problem with them, and a problem, very likely could end up with you getting killed.
Right.
So I knew if at that point in time ever came, I was never ever going to get shook down by an organized crime guy. That wasn't going to happen. But I also knew that I couldn't win because, if it ever came to that, I had to leave town.
Right.
In the first few years I lived here, I lived like a hermit. I never left, the only place I went to was a Horseshoe. We didn't go to a lot of places sociably, things like that. And then I made a mistake. I started playing poker professionally. My partner was Chip Reese. And then, my name got around town a little bit too because I was playing sports, playing high. I had about 30 guys on the street working for me. And then I did get approached, and I was approached to meet with Tony Spilotro. And I knew what the discussion was going to be about, and so I just left. I went back to Kentucky, where I'm from, and I was prepared to stay there. I would have never came back, and but a few months later, he got killed in a cornfield in Indiana, and then he was killed, and organized crime basically was over here then.
Yeah.
And then I came back, and
Maybe I misfollowed the story, but it sounds like at one point you did meet with Spilotro with Benny Binion. He called a meeting for you on your behalf.
No, I had a brief meeting with Tony Spilotro at Oscar's office, just Tony Spilotro and myself.
Okay.
The meeting you're referring to with Spilotro and Benny Binion was actually, that involved Billy Baxter and Doyle Brunson.
Okay.
They'd had a run-in with Spilotro also. And Benny Binion had agreed to talk to Spilotro, and it's a really interesting. It's a funny story. And you're right, it's in the book, but it involved Doyle Brunson and Billy Baxter. That one didn't involve me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was Benny like as a person? Just give us some insight into him.
I've said this many times, and I, the word common sense is used a lot. And the majority of people that use common sense, they really don't understand what common sense isn't so common. Benny Binion was undoubtedly, from my perspective, the smartest man I've ever known when it came to common sense.
Wow.
Very engaging guy. He had a plaque in his office. He said, "My friends can do no wrong, my enemies can do no right," and that's the way he lived his life. And he was a great guy to have as a friend, and he was probably a really bad guy to have as an enemy.
Yeah.
But Benny Binion really, unless somebody bothered Benny Binion, he kind of, he didn't, but he could certainly, he could hold his own if he needed to. he was a great guy. His oldest son, Jack, is I consider to be, if not my best friend, because a lot of our friends, he's certainly one of my best friends. And, Benny his word was his bond. If he told you something, he was going to do it, and you knew where you stood with him. He was a funny guy, a real witty guy. He truly was. The word character is, in my opinion, is so overused. But he truly was a character. There's no question about it. He was a Las Vegas icon.
So it's funny you say that, because I haven't obviously come from that generation, and dealing with people of that generation, I never had that opportunity except for Oscar. And when you say your word is your bond, we're sitting here in Oscar's Steakhouse, and I remember when we did the deal for this place to be called Oscar's, and Oscar's our partner to this day, we were going to sign an agreement. And Oscar took one look at the agreement and said, look, I'll sign this, but just so you know, what I tell you I'm going to do, and you better be the same way, otherwise this document's irrelevant, because I'm a man of my word, basically.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me forever. And to this day, we've been partners now 12 years. We've never looked at that that document. It's always been what we said we were going to do. And I guess that's a dying breed today, because everything is, I don't want to say dying breed, but it doesn't exist anymore, because people are so litigious and everything's contract, and it's kind of a shame that that's gone.
Well, I agree. Documents are only as good as the people who sign them.
Yeah.
It's,
And earlier you had mentioned Doyle Brunson, and you had a big smile on your face. Can you share any stories about Doyle Brunson?
Well, I knew Doyle Brunson, and of course I knew Billy Baxter, I knew Chip Reese, I knew Puggy Pearson. I knew all those guys before I moved to Las Vegas, because I spent a lot of time here in the 70s. Doyle was my first partner, and Doyle was a high gambler and big poker player, and he liked to bet sports, and so he was my first partner, financial partner. So he put up all the money, and back in those days, the belief was, you couldn't win betting on ball games. But if you did think you could win, the most bets you could make would maybe be 2 or 3 a week, at the most. Well, the first week I made about 35 bets, and we lost over $1 million. And this was in '82, and Doyle went into shock. I mean, $1 million in 1982. Was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And and Billy Baxter was his partner at the time, because I'd gone to Billy first, and Billy he didn't want to partner up. I mean, and we laugh about it today, because Billy's another one of my best friends. But at the time when I moved to Las Vegas, I had a reputation of a guy that drank. I had a reputation of a guy who couldn't manage his money well. I had a reputation of a guy who was a real dangerous gambler, and probably somebody. But eventually I tossed my money off from, probably from drinking. So Billy decided he'd pass. But he called Doyle, and he put us together. And so after I lost $1 million, Doyle called Billy up, and he said, "You ain't never done a goddamn thing that's good for me." He said, and Billy's answer was, he hesitated for a minute, and Doyle told me this story. He hesitated for a minute, and Billy said, "Well, Doyle," said, "I just ain't that smart." So anyway, the next week, we won our money back, and we won 200 and some odd thousand. I think we won 240. Doyle said, "I can't take this anymore," and so we cut the 240 up. He
couldn't take the swings.
No, he couldn't take the swings. So we cut the 240 up. I got 120. He got 120, and then my new partner was Chip Reese, and who was entirely different than Doyle, and then we were partners up until we dissolved our partnership in December of '84. But anyway.
Great guy. So there's one guy you do talk about in the book who many people credit as being the founding father of Las Vegas and a genius, but it sounds like your relationship wasn't so good, and that's Steve Wynn. Is it really just because you beat him at roulette? Is that really the extent of that?
100%, nothing more.
You beat him for like $2.5 million on a roulette table?
I won a little bit more money than that from him, but yeah, I was 100% because I won money from him at the roulette.
And he was your friend prior to that?
Oh, prior to that, we played poker, we played golf together, we did a lot of things together. Yeah, 100%. And the week before, I lost the money to him. I mean, I won the money from him. I lost $1 million to him playing blackjack.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I heard that, and he just didn't like the fact that he lost. Okay, so it was more. And did you ever reconcile those differences, or to this day you never spoke again after you beat him at roulette?
No.
Did he know it was because the table had bias? Is that what it was at this
Well,
point?
he actually sent the table to the manufacturer to have it checked. The manufacturer told him the table was fine. And then my understanding was he sent it to NASA, had the table cut up to see if there was nothing wrong with the table. But he sent Paul and Son, or the people who was the manufacturer, he sent it to them because he thought and they told him, this table's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. So.
But you and your team found some number bias.
Well, we felt like there was some bias. What we realized back in those days is the average roulette wheel at the time was probably 20 years old. And every roulette wheel had some bias to it, okay? And every one of them did. But the majority of them, there wasn't enough of a bias to be able to overcome the negative percentage, the 2 zeros or the 1 zero. But there were some, and what I would initially do is I'd get 3,000 numbers on a wheel, and if it looked like there may be a bias there, then I'd get another 27,000 numbers. And we would run a program to, if in fact, try to confirm there was enough of a bias to overcome the house edge. And I started playing roulette wheels, and I played them, all over Nevada, Atlantic City, a lot of places. And then I got where I couldn't play, and I started using other people to play. And then what happened was eventually everybody ended up buying all new roulette wheels, and they replaced them. But if you were to hold a gun to my head and somebody said, I'm going to blow your brains out, I couldn't tell you what was wrong with those roulette wheels. I had bought a roulette wheel, I disassembled it, and it was like any mechanical device. It was like an airplane or a car or anything else. Yeah. And if it weren't maintained properly or a part was worn, you could create a bias. And
you think that, so the wheels are just better today, so there's less. It still must happen today. I still see it down with our roulette wheels. We try to follow along to make sure there isn't that. But I'm guessing there's guys getting 27,000 pieces of data on a wheel to make sure that they find an edge. It probably still goes on today to a degree.
Well, I think the wheels are a lot better today in the way they're manufactured. I think it's a lot more difficult because you can move. 3 today could be 32 tomorrow.
Right.
So
thank you for making me feel better about that.
Yeah.
I do lose sleep about the wheels. We're the only single zero roulette table in the city. Frankly.
Well, and it's still one of the strongest games in the entire world is a single zero.
Right.
They've been dealing single zero roulette wheels in Europe for hundreds of years.
That's what I always based on, because I used to gamble in the UK, and I lost a lot of money on roulette, and I'm like, well, why do we have to do double zero if we can do single zero and still give people a better game?
Right.
Rich wants to know who got you 27,000 numbers on a roulette wheel, but I'm guessing you had guys doing that for you.
I did have guys doing it.
You're not sitting there getting 27,000.
No. Yeah. I paid people to do it.
Yeah.
And at the time, they would give you special rules on roulette where if it hit zero, it would be a no bet.
They still will.
They still will?
Oh, sure. If you're a big enough player, any of these joints will bar a zero for you.
Okay.
Again, you know what the per is. With 1 0, it's still one of the strongest games in the world.
Yeah.
Now some places have 000 on their roulette wheels.
Well, yeah. Next thing you know, they have 4.
No, the best is, though, I hear the customers and they see the triples. They're like, oh, that's good. We got more chance to land it in that number. We got more chance to land it on the greens.
It's one of the main reasons I wrote the book. As I explained to you, I see all these people out there betting sports, and I see kind of what's going on, and I put a basic betting strategy in the book for 99.9% people bet sports. I put an advanced section in there for guys that want to be professional handicappers, which I believe it took me 6 months to write that to get it down to where it's at, and a lot of people still have a difficult time following that. But the basic strategy that I put in there for betting sports is like the basic strategy card for blackjack. If you just follow what I put in there from a basic strategy standpoint, you're still going to lose your money, but you got a much better chance because the average bettor today bets with one place. Okay, he doesn't shop around. He has no idea whatsoever what the marketplace is out there. And if he's betting with the wrong place, like we give you an example, MGM. I see their odds every day. If you see MGM up there, the average bettor who doesn't know what's going on, everything is under the premise that you're laying 11 to 10. Okay, all right. Well, on MGM, some of their teasers you're laying $1.35.
Yeah.
Some of the parlays you're laying $1.35. When it comes to selling a half a point, every half point has a value to it. If you sell it, fine, make a profit with it. Okay, I put charts in there in the book that shows you whatever half point's worth, what the break even is if you want to buy it, or you want to, if you consider buying half a point. I put the comparison in there of what the money line is compared to the point spread. But you got people out there today, they're betting with one sports book, okay? Okay, they've heard it's good. Okay, it's good to buy 3, okay? Well, it is good to buy 3 if you can buy it at a fair price.
Right.
Because it happens 8% of the time.
Yeah. So buying 3, is worth approximately 20 cents. Okay. Well, you got books out there. You add 20 to the 10. That's 3 minus 30. 3 minus 30 and is the same as 3.5. Well, if you want to buy 3, say at some of them, to give you an example, some of them don't even offer you the opportunity to buy half a point because they don't know they don't know what the right price is. And the ones that do, that put it up, they set you a ridiculous price up. They know, well, here we got to be good with this, so they want to charge you $1.40 to buy 3. Or let's say you want to buy an odd number. Say a game is 17.5. You want to buy it to 17. They may want to charge you $1.25 to buy 17. Yeah. So, and people, if they don't know what's fair and what's right, again, they all think, well, they've been taught, well, everything's 11 to 10.
Right.
Well, some of these bets they're making, they're laying $1.30, $1.35. First of all, they got no chance of laying 11 to 10, okay? But what they're doing now is complete suicide. You see these public earnings of FanDuel and DraftKings, right, and MGM. They're all focused on these 2-team parlays and these teasers because they're holding 35% with them.
Yeah.
Well, the people that are making the bets, they're uninformed. They don't know. They're just
recreational.
They got no chance. Well, recreational's fine. I mean, again, I as I put in the book, if you're going to bet on sports, to me, you set aside whatever amount of money you feel like you can afford to lose, because you're probably going to lose it, and you look at it as an entertainment, and you bet on it and enjoy it. Betting on sports is fun. But if you get involved and you think this is some get-rich-quick scheme, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble, which I did as a younger guy, and I shared that in the book.
Yeah. Well, I do think that what you talk about is very important, and why downtown Vegas might be the best option for sports bettors, because you have 5 different books on one street. So at least you can shop those odds if you want. If you're on the Strip, it's going to take you 2 hours to get to 5 different books. Right here, you got William Hill, you got Circa, you got FanDuel, you got Stations, you got Golden Nugget. Not necessarily the best options, but you got at least 5 options for where you. And if I'm going to put a bet on, I'll walk to the Golden Nugget, see what they got versus Circa versus here, just to get an idea of the different lines. And they do drastically vary, to your point.
I don't think there's any question about that. Downtown, you've always been able to get a better value as far as your gamble's concerned. I mean, the blackjack rules have always been, been more liberal. They've been fair. The crap odds, sports betting. The problem with sports betting in Nevada is you've got monopolies now. You've got, instead of having 5 individual owners down there with 5 individual opinions, I don't know who all's running these books, but you probably only got, I don't know how many you got, but the worst thing that ever happened in Nevada, the worst thing that ever happened was these mergers.
Yeah.
This town would be, if you had 25 owners today or 30, this town would be so much better off than it is. It wouldn't even be close.
Yeah.
As far as the state's concerned, as far as the customer's concerned, and everyone else, it's just because what happens when you got no competition. That's how you end up with this kind of pricing.
Right.
If you got a huge presence, and a customer doesn't have any choices, you can charge a guy $1.35.
Right.
If he's uneducated, he doesn't know what the right price is or how to figure it, and then on top of that, if he has no other choice, he's got to pay it.
Yeah. Did you ever bet at the Union Plaza, as you call it? Did you ever deal with Jackie Gorn? Because Jackie Gorn's sort of someone that I look up to as a mentor, someone that I thought was one of the best operators in town.
And rightfully so. Jackie was a bookmaker from Wichita, and but I came here many years ago, and Johnny Quinn was running a sports book. So this was the place. I mean, Bob Martin, Johnny Quinn, but Jackie Gorn, I bet here, when I first came to town, I bet here, and I bet the El Cortez, we bet all over town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sports that you over the years have stayed away from? Because there wasn't a lot of talk about boxing. We mentioned boxing a little bit earlier. Like, were you guys taking any action on any of the big boxing events or the Tyson fights in the 90s, any type of mixed martial arts?
Well, first of all, I never took any action on anything.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I bet on it.
Mentally bet,
But to answer your question, no, I bet on it. When I was doing this, I bet on every sport there was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you bet on? What years were you in jail?
No, I went to prison in 2017.
Okay. So you were out for during COVID, or were you there during COVID?
I was in there during COVID. I got released because of COVID.
So then Then the question I was going to ask you is a moot point, but we all found ourselves betting on Russian ping pong and Korean baseball during COVID. You stayed away from that. You're too smart for that.
Yeah. Well, no, what happened was over the years, I quit betting baseball probably 25 years ago. We were working 365 days a year. I was literally killing my people. I mean, you get in the fall of like this time of the year, you got college basketball, you've got college football, you've got the NFL, you've got hockey, every day you've got to make numbers on every one of these games, and then you've got to go out and you've got to make all those bets, and then you've got to pay, you've got to collect, you've got to do all those things, and then baseball during the season, it's relentless. I mean,
162 games.
Yeah, well, and it's 7 days a week, and then game's over at midnight, and you're up at 4:30 the next morning. So anyway, by that time I'd also I'd got in the golf business. I got back in the automobile business. I mean, my day was here was my day. Just so I sat at a desk with 3 monitors. And I had 7 golf courses. I had 22 automobile dealerships. And so on that computer, anything pertaining to any businesses I got about 150 emails a day. Those things came in. And then I had a middle monitor that I had all the real-time odds on sports. I use Spank Odds today, which I think Spank Odds is hands down the best one there is today. But I had the real-time odds on every sports book, literally, well, not every, but every sports book in the world. And then I had a Bloomberg terminal on the right side that, I tracked all of my stocks and commodities and things I was doing with that. So all day long, every day, I was either answering those emails, answering calls from the guys that ran the stores if something came up, because I answer my own phone. I don't have an assistant. And then I was betting sports. I was giving orders to the guys in the office with sports, telling them what to do and when to do it. And then I was doing stocks with the Bloomberg thing, so I was pretty busy.
Yeah.
And then, so I decided, I had to quit the baseball because, like I said, I was killing everybody. And then I cut it back. I was only doing basketball and football, and then finally I ended up quitting basketball, and I got down to where I was doing nothing but football. So when I realized I was going to be indicted in the Southern District of New York, I quit. When I quit, I had an office in Panama City, Panama, with a lot of employees. I had 1,600 accounts. We were betting worldwide. But I had to quit to prepare for the trial. And, of course, once I got convicted and I went to prison, I was doing no gambling at all.
Yeah.
And then because I went to prison, I still had about 5 golf courses, and I had 18 car dealerships. I got rid of 4. And so I'm in prison, and I'm trying to, run these businesses in prison, which is pretty tough. And so anyway.
It saved you having no sports to bet on. We all went crazy for those 3 months when there was no sports to bet. That's when I took up golf. It was the pandemic.
Yeah, well, good.
Do you have any sports that you found to be the most profitable?
Must be football. It's the only one you're keeping on doing, right?
No, not really. I think, no, it wouldn't be the most profitable. I bet sports today because, look, I enjoy betting sports. I'll bet sports until the day I die, and I'm still successful in doing what I do. If I ever got to the point I wasn't, I quit. And I still get a thrill out of betting on sports and watching a game, But I don't have the time to do the other sports, and I don't have the interest in getting back involved from that perspective, having a large number of people, dealing with a large number of people. I'm more or less today, what you consider a serious recreational player, maybe, well, I kind of I'll probably never be what you call a recreational player, but anyway.
You still move the lines, right? When you bet, it still moves the lines?
Yeah, probably moves a little bit when I bet on a game. Yeah, it probably does. But, I've still got a couple car dealerships, and then I still have a major presence with what I do with stocks, and then, I do sports.
Yeah.
I do football, and so I got enough to keep me busy.
So I know we do have to wrap up with you pretty soon. But I did want to ask you, you talk a lot about your big wins, especially on the Super Bowl. You had a $3.25 million bet. You had some big $1 million bets on the Patriots when they beat the Seahawks. Any bad beats that stick out to you? Richard's shaking his head because he's a Seahawks fan, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I wrote.
And by the way, in sports or in golf or anything that you've done yourself, just any bad beats that stick out to you is like.
Yeah. I wrote a story in the book, about one of the worst bad beats I ever took. I had a big bet. It was a Super Bowl with the Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals, and I'd bet on the Cardinals in a first half bet. I'd made a bet on them in the overall game. And I'd bet, I think it was $850,000 on them in the first half. And I had the first half bet won. There's like under a minute to go in the first half. Arizona's on Pittsburgh's goal line. They're on the 1 yard line. And so if they don't score goes out where it's at. I won my bet. I don't need from the score. If they score, that's even better. Kurt Warner throws a pass in the end zone, and James Harrison intercepts that pass. Now, James Harrison's a big, burly linebacker. Mm-hmm. He ran that ball back for 100 yards. I mean, it looked like a water buffalo going down the field. And you got Larry Fitzgerald's chasing him. He's chasing him down the sideline. One of the Arizona players got in Larry's way, impeded him. And somehow or another, this guy, he runs it back 100 yards. Falls in the end zone, and when he fell in the end zone, he took my pretty money with me. Well, my pretty money with him. So instead of winning $850, I lost $935,000. So you do the math. I mean, so that's
$1.8 million swing on James Harrison running 100 yards.
That was a tough one. And then, it's actually, I lost one of the toughest games, frankly, I've ever lost. I actually lost it this last weekend. It's not in the book because I'd already written a book. But I bet on Minnesota. They were playing Illinois. And Minnesota's got a 5-point lead. There's like a minute to go in the game. And Illinois got the ball on their own 10-yard line.
This is just last week.
This last week, yeah. Quarterback goes back to pass. It's 3rd and 10, and he gets sacked. They knock him out of the game. So it's 4th and 10, minute to go. They bring in a sub off the bench. The sub, he completes 3 passes in a row, the last one being a 50-yarder in the end zone for them to win the game. He walks into the game. His first play is 4th and 10 on his own 10. And he took it from there, and he scored a touchdown.
Scored a Hail Mary, basically.
3 passes in a row. Well, actually not. They threw a couple passes, got it out to 50. And then the guy's going to his left. He throws the ball across his body, and he threw a hell of a pass. And the guy catches an end zone, a 50-yarder for a touchdown, and that was the end of that one.
So when you lose a bet like that, do you throw the remote? Do you no? Because you're too experienced at this point. You're probably like us, where you're just like, yeah, okay, there's another.
Well, I mean, he lost that game for one reason. I mean, Minnesota because of the coach. These coaches. Prevent defense, it prevents you from winning. That's all it does. I mean, if he had rushed his quarterback with all-out blitz, his first play come in, the guy would have never even got the pass off, much less completed the pass. But those passes he completed, there wasn't a defender within 10 yards of this guy. They're just trying to keep him in front of him. Well, they kept him in front of him. But now when they got to midfield, they tried to play defense. But that was too late. And he got to midfield, he throws this unbelievable pass. And the guy who did this was a 5th-year senior. It wasn't like he's some freshman that the coach overlooked or, that was a great player all along. It wasn't that case at all. The guy was a journeyman.
Wow.
Anyway, it is what it is, but that's what happens in sports.
But you don't react. You just sort of say, you chalk it up.
Well, I mean, I'm no different than anyone else. I mean, it's, you get frustrated. Yeah, I don't care who you are. I mean, I could sit here and tell you a lot of bad beat stories, but you win some you're not supposed to win, too. I told a story about the New England game in the Super Bowl, but
why didn't Marshawn Lynch run that in?
Well, I know why he didn't. I mean, I got a real good idea why Pete Carroll didn't. It's easy to second guess him after the fact, but he had clock issues, and then at the time, I mean, New England had 3 timeouts over there, and I'm cussing Belichick under my breath. I'm thinking to myself, why didn't this fool call timeout? And because they would have had time for Brady to go down the field and kick the field goal to take it in overtime. I don't know if he overlooked it. I don't think it was intentional, but I think Pete Carroll he was sure that Belichick was going to call a timeout to conserve some time where Brady would have a chance to kick the field goal. Well, he didn't. Well, the clock, it just keeps running. Well, all at once, Pete Carroll sees this. He's got clock problems. You know, New England had Vince Wilfork in the middle of that line, okay? Now, Marshawn Lynch, it wasn't any sense he's going to run that ball in. I got news for you because they had brought their heavy crew in. So Pete Carroll, and on top of that, he thinks he's going to surprise them with this pass. Nobody expected him to do it.
For what it's worth, I did read Mike Lombardi's book, and he says that was tactical, that they let the clock run.
Yeah.
To put pressure on them. That's why they never took the time. But anyway.
Well, after the fact, it's good to say that. And, that's probably what I would say, too. Yeah. But anyway, it worked, whatever it was. But a lot of people, it's real easy to remember that one Marshawn Lynch, but Seattle should have never been there.
Yeah, he caught it off his leg. Bounced on his leg.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, up until that point in time, you think, well, I'm a big favorite to win this game. He throws a pass down there. Instead of getting intercepted, bong the ball around, and of course, after that, now I'm an underdog from there. I realize that. But anyway, that's, sports are, if you bet on sports, you realize, look, these things are going to happen. And you can go through periods of time. You can go through an entire season, and instead of that stuff, instead of you winning your share, you may lose. You may win 20% of those games, lose the other 80. You can go into the other season, and you'll win 80% of those, and you'll have a much better year than you should have.
Yeah.
Billy, can you even imagine 40 years ago that in 3 months that we're going to host the Super Bowl in Nevada? With all the sports betting and everything else of where this city was 40 years ago, that now the NFL and all major sports have embraced the sports betting, and now we have slot machines that are NFL branded?
No, it's something that I'd always hoped for, and I could never understand why. But finally, we came out of the dark ages. I mean, you look at Europe, you look at any part of Europe over there. I mean. Major League Soccer, that's the way they've treated Major League Soccer for years and years and years and years. It's there were some crazy laws passed in the 60s by when Kefauver was there and some of those guys, and they were old arcane laws and things, we were in dark ages here for a long, long time. So answer your question, no. Deep down, I'd always hoped that things would change, and like I said, I'm really proud to see that that one of my dreams has actually come true. So it's there's no reason why they shouldn't. Sports betting is so transparent. People are some people would tell you they're concerned with the legitimacy of these games because of the money. That's got to be the least of your concerns, because I can tell you right now, if there's anything going on with a sporting event, that's something you cannot hide. I mean, it's not like Wall Street. It's not like anything else. The market's so small, and if you see, there was a game actually last Saturday that I saw that I'm still looking into, and it was the New Mexico UNLV game, and there was line movement on that game like I've never seen, and that game was like 9 on Friday, went to 11 on Saturday, and I saw that game close as high as 17, and for no rhyme or reason. And I've been,
But isn't there must be something to do with perfect information? And I'm sorry, we're going way over here. But like the Browns game last weekend, they're -8. And then Deshaun Watson's playing. Somebody must have known he was going to be healthy. Now they're -12. Yeah. Right? That's perfect information. If you know that the -8 is going to be a great bet, who's getting that information?
Well, frankly, when the game was -8, I knew then he was likely to play. I don't know why people were so surprised when they announced it. I mean, one thing about the NFL, it's the most transparent thing in the entire world. If you do any work at all, anybody should have known that the chances of Deshaun Watson playing were pretty daggum good. And why people were surprised when they announced he was in and to move 3 points, it shocked me. I thought to myself, I mean, who in the world didn't know that he was probably going to play to start with?
Books, every book.
Yeah, and it was just amazed me. And but all that information's out there. I mean, the NFL is probably the most transparent thing in the entire world. I mean, you wish the stock market was as transparent as the NFL is.
Yeah. And just kind of switching gears completely off of sports betting for a minute, but we really wanted to touch on it because it's a big piece of your book. Tell us about your work at Opportunity Village, because we know that you've done a lot of work and contributed a lot to that project.
Yeah. My eldest son, when he was 7 years old, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. And I was a young guy, going through life, and I've often told this story, and I've kind of compared it to a guy going down the road. He's on the interstate, and he's doing whatever. He sees the trees in the periphery and what have you, but he sees it there, but he really doesn't notice them. And handicapped people, intellectually challenged people, I knew there were people in the world like that, but I really wasn't focused on. I was focused at the time on being successful, making money, and Well, my son was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. That's when I really got tuned into people with intellectual disabilities. And fortunately, my son, through a miracle, he lived. He came to Las Vegas to live with us, and I got introduced to Opportunity Village through a lady named Kitty Rodman. And the more that I got into it, and the more that I learned about the organization, and more importantly, intellectually challenged people, handicapped people. At the time, I was on 6 charity boards, and I was really getting frustrated. I was on a lot of these big national charity boards, and a lot of the money was going out of the city. 40% of it, the 60% that was left, it was being given to the same people who had the political juice. And a lot of organizations that needed the money weren't getting it. But when Opportunity Village, 95% of every dollar there was going to be spent on the clients. I mean, 5% is all the money they were spending. And then as I got involved and I went over there and I spent time and I met the clients, I mean, you got people through no fault of their own, okay? They came into this world. They were dealt the rottenest hand in the world. And all they want to do in life is do what you and I take for granted. They want to be a productive member of society. Well, at Opportunity Village, they can come there, okay? They get a job, okay? And they get paid based upon, whatever they're able to do. It's not a handout. I mean, they earn their money. Right. Okay, they have a social life there. They have their friends, okay? And I've taken people through there on hundreds of tours. And every time I go, I'll talk to a client there. And every time I get the same response. How you doing? I'm having the greatest day. Yeah. You never hear one complain. You never hear, it's just, so it's Opportunity Village and intellectually challenged people, it just strictly stole my heart. Yeah. I thought to myself, if you can't support, people such as this, the issues they got, it wasn't self-inflicted. Right. They came into this world this way, and they're the proudest people I've ever met, the hardest working people I've ever met, and it's just a fabulous organization.
That's incredible, and thank you for your hard work. We've been supporters of Opportunity Village from the beginning. We did the Santa run that they always do downtown. So for anyone listening, and we'll put a link to it, please support Opportunity Village in any way that you can.
Well, and last but not least, I'm going to put a plug in here for anybody who's looking for employees. If you find someone through Opportunity Village, or you find someone who has an intellectual disability, and they can perform a job that you have, you'll never hire a better employee in your life. you're looking at somebody that would be the most appreciative person you could ever find, but more importantly, someone you could, you're not going to, I mean, they're just happy to have a job. They're going to be there every day, and whatever you're paying them, they're going to be, you could never get a better employee. So, again, the key is finding something they're capable of, a job that they can function. But there's we have a lot of clients that can really function at a high level, and so that's another thing that a lot of employees are overlooking is.
We should look at that for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you really should, because I'll tell you, they'll be the best employees you ever hired, and you don't have to worry about. They're going to be so appreciative of the job. You're not going to hear complaints from them. They'll be there every day, and they're going to be happy with whatever money you're paying them.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And then we asked this last question again. Thank you again so much for your time. Any advice that you would like to give to our listeners, young entrepreneurs or young hustlers that are listening to our podcast, whatever that may be?
Well, whatever success I've had has strictly been because of the people I've been associated with. Mm-hmm. And, resiliency and hard work is that's been the biggest part of my success, or the biggest reason I have been successful. Not because I've been smarter than anyone else. I'm pretty resilient person, and I work pretty hard. So, that's and surround yourself with really good people. And I've been able to do that. I've been very fortunate.
That's great advice. Surround yourself with good people. You go to bed with pigs, you wake up with fleas.
Billy, thank you so much for being on the corner of Main Street. And again, the book is called Gambler: Secrets from a Life at Risk. Pick it up on Amazon or anywhere where you pick up books. Thank you again so much for being a part of the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It brings back a lot of memories being at the Union Plaza.
Are you a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.